Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are super excited to be hosting our first webinar for WSZ and this year. We have some really exciting features and enhancements that we want to share with you. So I will just get started. And as always, as you know, this webinar will cover our March release, which was released in March 12th. So most of the features that we're sharing today are already live, but in case we refer to any future releases or any other terms, we just want to give a reminder that this is all under Safe Harbor. And before we get started, I just want to share a few housekeeping items as usual. The first one being that we have saved time at the end of the session for a Q&A. So feel free to start putting your questions using the Q&A feature or on the chat. And if we don't get to answer your question throughout the webinar, just we will make sure to answer it at the end. So we have time for that. And then the second part is that this presentation will be recorded and it will be available for you to rewatch a week from today. And then lastly, after this event, you will be prompted with a feedback survey, and we would really appreciate you take a few minutes just to respond that. We really want to get your feedback and, keep on improving and giving you valuable sessions. So today for this webinar, I am joined by Elizabeth, who is a senior outbound PM for WSC, and myself, for those of you who have not met me, I'm Paulina. I'm also an outbound product manager for WSC. One important thing to call out is there was a change. Now live on ServiceNow webinars are moved to ServiceNow Exchange. So if you want to keep up to date with the schedule and see everything that's available to you, all the sessions like this one today, feel free to scan the QR code on the screen, and that will take you to the page where you can see everything that will be available. Now, for today, the main agenda would be to cover the major feature releases. So all the new features that were added into the product as of the March release. We'll also cover the minor enhancements that were added. And then as promised, we will do a Q&A session as well. So now I will pass it to Elizabeth to walk us through a few of the major feature releases.
Thank you very much, Paulina. If we start with could we move to the next slide? If we start with one of the first major investments we made for this release, is really if you think back to how organizations work today and how employees are able to raise cases to request a specific catering, request a specific item in the workplace, they need cleaning, they need maintenance done. They open several cases, and the way then it's fulfilled in the back end depends on the organization, the way the setup is done by the organization. So if you think about it as some of these requests might be fulfilled internally. So you've got internal agents that are going to provide the services, fulfill those cases, update them, and have it all sync back. So everything would stay within WSD. If you think about it, if you're looking at a lot larger organizations, sometimes these buildings are managed by third parties. These third party providers could also be using their own systems. So making sure that they have the information related to, okay, the employees requested cleaning. This needs to be routed to a third party provider. How can I make sure that information gets sent to them instead of having to call them, instead of having to have an email or an Excel spreadsheet to track all the work that's going to be done? What we've released here is a new framework. So think about it as, if we move to the next slide, maybe a visual picture will help comprehend this in an easier way. The idea of having that system of engagement, so where that employee will continue to raise their cases via the mobile, via the employee center, scanning a QR code in every possible way they can raise a case. They will continue to do that as that engagement layer. And then here it's providing more power to that facility team. How are those cases going to be fulfilled? They can then define the case routing engine. So defining who needs to fulfill it. Is it internal? Is it external? If it's external, what are the criteria that will need to be met to make sure it gets sent to the right provider? If I take the example, if I look at my London location, it might be one of my headquarters. I might have multiple different teams working on different services, and therefore I need to really understand which provider should this case be routed to. So understanding the engine of how do I want to configure it per location, also per service type. So it could be my London location for catering, this should go for a specific provider A, and then if it's cleaning, it should go to provider B. These different systems these different FM providers have their actual own systems where they go and do the work. So the idea is having that case coming, going through the routing of who it should be sent to, and going through that process, you can then also include approvals, but that would effectively create a work order that will be then sent to that third party provider. So what we're providing with this release is really that framework of being able to have the case ingested, have it go through the routing of which provider should it go to, and then that framework of how can those providers connect with a spoke into the system to make sure that the locations in WSD with the locations in their systems align, but also the services that could be defined in a certain way in WSD also match the services that they provide. So really looking at here as a specific framework, and then we're working with multiple partners to connect those different spokes that are available directly on the ServiceNow store. So just to make it easier, what I'm going to do is take you through a quick demo of how this could be configured. So define really those routing of how that case should then be created, converted into a work order based on what criteria, and then explain to you how that information is then collected when the third party works on it, updates it, changes the status of it, requests more information from the employee. How can that bidirectional connection actually work? So what I'll do is just go ahead and share my screen. So here we're looking into workplace, where the screen I'm currently showing you is Workplace Central. But before even coming to this part, I want to show you really how the providers are set up, but also how how that routing engine can actually be configured. So what we've added with this release is a specific in the menu. I can look for the facility management setup, and I have two items here to set up. I have the providers, and then I have the provider routing rules. So we'll start with the providers in terms of depending on the size of my organization, depending on how each location is set up, I might have one provider that goes across all locations. I might have 10 providers that are specifically on one location. I might have 500 different providers across the globe. So the idea here really is to define each of my providers and define the flows that would create the work order, and how is it going to be updated, how is it going to be cancelled in terms of making those changes. So if we look at one of them that we set up in terms of demo purposes, think of this is going to be actually connected to the API of your third party. So let's say this is the demo FM, but this could be example if you've got a large organization, you might be working with JLL who uses Corrigo, you might be working with CBRE, you might be working with ISS. All of them have their own system. So think of this as setting up the provider and having this connected to their API to have that mapping between your locations in WSD, their locations, and the specific services that you have here with their specific services. So for each of these providers, you'll define the specific flows of this, and then based on that, you'll then go ahead and create the routing rules. How is this specific provider going to be called based on what the employee has submitted? So defining these different routing rules. I could have one only routing rule, only if a case gets opened by an employee in my London location that says they need cleaning to be done, should be routed to this provider. If someone else opens a ticket in London and says, I'm requesting a badge, that might go to a different provider. So the idea is to set up those different routing rules. I can either set them up directly on my provider level, or I can also go to my menu and define my specific routing rules. So I could have as many as I want and as precise as I want, or really build on that condition to make sure all of those are captured in one go. So if I take that example of my demo provider, what's going to happen is, I'm just going to go and edit it here. What's going to happen here, it's going to show me exactly how can I set up my specific rules about how this should be routed. So if I open up a record that was pre-configured earlier today, what I can see here is to be routed to this specific provider, I can select the table. So the table effectively is going to say which table is going to be creating that work order. Is it from the case that's generated, or is it going to be from a task? You have the option of selecting either of those to make sure that work order gets created. And then I have my set of conditions. So as I was saying, is the case active? In which case, yes. Is it specific to cleaning, which this provider does? They only do cleaning. But if they do emergency maintenance, if they do badge request, I could add these conditions and really define specifically. I could also say, and the location of the case should be a specific location. I can really define here what conditions should be met to make sure that the work order gets sent to the right provider that I have. Once I've configured all of my different routing rules and providers, what's going to happen is as soon as the employee raises a case, so any workplace related case, the system will analyze it and it will route it to the correct provider. So having said all of that, if we take the example of a few cases that were also created earlier, if it does want to open now. So let's look at a general request that Able Tutor opened earlier today. What happened here is he opened a general request, and based on my routing rules, what I can see here now is that it went specifically to that demo FM, the provider that was set up. I had different rules there, and what it did, okay, keeping in mind this is demo data, so it's not created an actual work order, but since this is demo data, we did create the information here. But what it does is create that work order that is then sent to that system where they can actually go and work on it and update the case with any relevant work notes, but also on the status of this case. So let's say they've completed the work, they want to update it and then notify the employee. They would do that and it would sync bi-directionally. If they need more information, they could also reach out and say, I need more information. And we can see here that the employee also added more information, and that would also be reflected directly on the work order. They would be updated in real time of all the information that is shared back and forth to make sure you've got that one system where all the information is shared and you're not losing anything. You're not looking in your spreadsheet of, did this provider fulfill everything that I sent to him? I can really track it here as the case manager on the back end of all these different updates. Similar one here, I have a second case that got routed to a different provider, and I can see here on their system they went back and forth and did update the specific work order that they were working on. And I can see here it got routed in terms of ServiceNow, but not internally to WSD. It went out to the team working on the field service management. I could see the work order. I could also go and track that work order to see exactly the same information that's relative here. So really been able to provide that end-to-end experience of the employee raises their case. I can really track it from the start to the end, making sure it's being completed, and I'm not losing any of the work notes that are being added in it, and I can really keep that data in at the same time. And if there's a lot of back and forth on this, we'll get to this in a minute, but sneak peek, we do have a new capability also added onto our case management with AI to be able to summarize any of the tasks, any of the notes that have been added, but also what is the case being raised about. So we do have that capability that we'll touch upon in a few minutes when we get to that. So that was high level what we have now for the IFM framework provider. We are, as I mentioned, working with several partners to be able to have those different spokes to connect directly into WSD. So if you want more information on that, feel free to reach out to myself. And then I can share more guidance in terms of which partner is already live with that spoke on the store and which ones are in the process of putting that on the store. So now if I move on to the next capability, what I'm going to do is move over to my second desktop, if it's wanting to load.
Do you want me to share it? I can also do
Yep,
that.
if you can, because my PowerPoint is just going in a circle. Ah, here we go, I think. Oh, it's not showing the right screen. So second major investment we did is in terms of space planning. So you'll see throughout this year that we are investing a lot into space planning, space management. How can we really provide that experience to space planners, workplace facility managers to really be able to right size their space, understand their portfolio, understand the allocations, the assignments throughout the workplace, so they're making sure that they're delivering the great experience to their employees, making sure they've got the right size and they're having the teams collaborate between them. Having said that, the experience that we've enabled here does not rely on space management. This is really an enhancement that's been designed for all WSD customers to make sure that they can define really the employee assignments and the neighborhood governance. How can I make sure that I have that map view that I'm using for my employee experience? How can I use that to make sure that I am assigning them correctly, not just blindly looking at lists and forms? And how can I really visualize how I'm allocating and assigning different spaces and users to specific neighborhoods? So this is really an enhancement for all WSD users to be able to have that specific view and then have those key metrics in terms of what's the capacity, what's the ratio, where can I find the information, how can I easily locate an employee, how can I view the list of all my spaces, and how can I use a lot of filtering capabilities. So I'll go into a demo of this very briefly in a few minutes, but we do have, so this is that main focus point of being able to do a lot from the map. And the second part is really related to how can I manage my neighborhoods. So if we think about it, for customers that were previously or do have space management, there's an entire experience where I can really manage and assign my neighborhood spaces and employees. the neighborhoods will then move to Workplace Core, and Workplace Core is available for all customers. So this really provides that experience of not only being able to assign and allocate desks, spaces, and employees to a specific neighborhood, so kind of zones where they can collaborate, make reservations, find on a map, work as groups. This really provides these space planners, workplace managers with the option to not only do it via list and form view, so like the bare bone view, but really from that map view. Being able to now provide that map view helps them really understand how they're allocating the spaces and assigning those employees. So what I'll do is just go and share my screen so I can show you in an instance what this specifically looks like. So within Workplace Central, if you're familiar with Workplace Central, we now have this new module of space planning. Space planning is going to provide you that with that overview to be able to, as I said, allocate and assign employees and spaces, but also manage your neighborhoods. So when I open space planning, I have some new filtering capabilities where I can select my campus, I can search for an employee, I can search for a space, I can search for a specific location, but I do also have these filter options that are really similar to what we have on the location directory. So being able to select a specific floor, let's say I want to look at my demo campus building A floor 2. Today, I can look at the view, really a basic view, or I can also have the option to look at neighborhoods and space types. Really want to remind everyone that this experience, what I'm showing you, is related to Workplace Core and Workplace Central. There's no need for any space management within this specific experience. So what I want to show you here specifically, if we want to look at neighborhoods, I have the option to view the specific MAC. I can see that I've got employees assigned. I can really understand the legend behind all of this one. I can understand the legend of which are the unassigned desk, the ones that have got someone assigned to it, where there's got a neighborhood, where there's a mix of both. So really being able to drill down on that specific, on those specific icons to understand more. So we've got also relevant tabs up here. I'll go into those in detail, but what I want to show you is really that everything can be done from this entry point of the map. So I've got the option of selecting spaces. I can still do it by selecting it from the map, viewing the details of that space, editing that space, allocating it to a specific neighborhood, viewing the details of that space in terms of the capacity, is anyone assigned to it? I can add a user in terms of assigning a user to that space. I also have the option of selecting a user. So let's say I want to select a specific user that doesn't have a location assigned today. I will have a location. So I have the option of selecting any user to be able to assign them to a specific space. I can select them in bulk. I can also now have a lot of more filtering capabilities. So if I want to do advanced filtering, let's say show me all the specific employees that are part of a certain neighborhood or that are part of a certain department that is coming from their workplace profile, I can really drill down and have more visibility into this. So let's say show me all the employees that are part of the neighborhood finance. I can add multiple conditions. Of course, here I don't have any. That's the purpose of a a live demo, but you really see the purpose here of being able more to filter and drill down to specifically select and then assign anyone. So if I just remove that filter, and if I take the example of I want to select the top 3 people, it's going to move this window. I then have the option to select those 3 and be able to usually assign them. And of course, my demo instance is not working today. So I have the option to select users. I can add multiple users. Let's say they've got employees that aren't assigned. They're assigned to a different location or they're not assigned anywhere. I can add users to the specific floor or only the specific campus. So being able to say able needs to be assigned to this floor or needs to be part of a neighborhood, or I can view the basic information specifically of this person and then confirm that I want to now change it and have him assigned specifically only to this floor. I've got the option of selecting my different neighborhoods. So I've got the color coding of all my neighborhoods. I can select anyone specifically. I can still do also the lasso functionality to select multiple spaces that I want to edit in one go. My spaces will be selected. I can view the information based on all the spaces I selected. So the assignment ratio, the different ratios I have, a recap of all the spaces that I've selected. I can allocate these or I can add an allocation. So let's say I want to allocate these. I want to remove the existing allocation that they have and I want to put them into now the finance neighborhood. So I can apply that. But of course, if they were already assigned to another neighborhood, but I want them now across two different neighborhoods, I could say, show me add it to the existing allocation that I've done. So if I apply that, it's going to take a few seconds to change the color coding, and you can see that now they're part of that finance department. If I wanted to say, okay, I want to now work on all these NBH3 Avis spaces, I could just say, I want to select a specific neighborhood. I want to select all of these, and it's going to highlight them all for me, just like we saw before. Give me the information on the space count, the assignment ratios, the capacity, recap of all the spaces. Again, I can change the allocations. I can directly assign employees specifically to this neighborhood, and I can view the different space types that are counted now as part of the spaces that are selected. So being able to do all of this from that map view, but then I also have the option to go more into detail if the map view is not sufficient for me, or if I don't have a map specifically deployed for this location. I could also look into my space tab. So same thing as I was mentioning before, we've now added the filtering conditions across the entire options of selecting spaces. So I could really define here the columns that would appear for me. I can filter down on only showing me example the spaces that are part of demo campus, and then I can add filtering options on. Let's say I want to add another filtering option on the. Let's not add a set. So move this one, and I want to say, and the space type is what would you have? Desk. Let's put contains. And then it would kind of go down on that list and filter the list based on my condition. So really helping me understand then how are these going to be allocated? Are they by department, by cost center later on? But really that provides you with more granularity and able to filter them and then selecting any of them and saying, I want to edit the allocation of these. Do I want to have them now included into the finance neighborhood? And I can confirm that. So I can do it from the map view, but I can also do this from specifically from the list view. We then have the other tab in terms of the workplace users. So same thing, I have the filtering options to look at my different users. I want to check which ones are assigned to a specific location, which one of those employees do not have a specific location. I can filter down and then do the assignments directly from this list and form view. So really having those same capabilities as I can do on the map, but the map really provides me with that visual layer of how and where can I do those changes, not kind of blindly, unless I know all my spaces off by heart, knowing the names of the desks, knowing the names of the meeting rooms. It really provides me with that visual way of making sure I'm placing my employees in the right location. And then lastly, we did make enhancements to the neighborhood capability to really make sure that we can manage it from that central location. So being able to visualize all my neighborhoods, really the basic information, but again, I can edit the columns to view the information that is required to me, but really understanding which ones are active, which ones are restricted. At a glance, I got that information. And again, I've got the filtering options where I can do advanced filtering if I want to specifically drill down for more information. But let's take the example of I want to look into the marketing neighborhood. I want to understand kind of the key KPIs of this specific neighborhood, understanding what's the total capacity of the neighborhood, how many users are assigned, how many spaces are assigned, and that will automatically calculate the ratio. So it's providing me that information at a glance. I then have, as of before, when I set up my neighborhood, I could have the option to define, is it active, is it restricted or not? So this really means the restricted or not would mean if someone is part of the neighborhood, they can visualize it, they can book in it. If it's unrestricted, meaning anyone could book in it and specifically view it. I could also have a short description. And then I've got my tabs that would reflect on what spaces are specifically assigned to this neighborhood, what are the workplace profiles that are assigned to the neighborhood. I can view the specific people that are going to be there. And then there's another piece that was already available in the product, but was kind of hidden previously, where I can kind of automate a lot of this assigning rules. So being able to use the assignment rules to say, okay, based on the workplace profiles, can we define a rule to say that anyone that is part of the HR cost center should automatically be assigned to this neighborhood? Or should anyone that is part of the finance department be assigned to this the specific neighborhood? Or anyone on floor 2 be assigned to this neighborhood. So really being able to automate a lot of this instead of doing the manual work. So saying you're hiring more people later on, as soon as they come into the system with their workplace profile and they have the information that's relative to that condition, they would automatically be integrated into that into that neighborhood without having to go and manually do that. And then that will update, of course, all the information relative to the assignments and the ratios here. So same thing around the space assignments. This could also be automated in terms of what rules should specifically be met in terms of the spaces that are added to make sure they fulfill that condition and then can automatically be allocated into this specific neighborhood. So really the idea behind that is making sure we're centralizing the information. I don't have to go and click through multiple lists and go back and forth in my specific tables to make sure that I'm looking at the right space. And then I go back to Map Studio to make sure it's the right space. Or I'm looking in the location directory because I have access to the map when I'm configuring that. It's really to provide that entire experience to everyone that is using WSD, not only the people that have space management, because as I said, this experience is available for people that have Workplace Core and Workplace Central. So really being able to provide that visual way of managing all of this to provide that experience throughout WSD for employees, and then for making sure that you understand your portfolio and making sure that you have the spaces allocated and employees assigned. So having said that, I'm now going to pass it back to Paulina for one of our next major enhancements.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I will now walk you through one of our enhancements to indoor mapping, specifically map printing. So we heard a lot of requests of how it was turning into a very high need to have more availability to do layers into the printing of the maps that we have available. And so with that, this release covers for that. We now have available high quality PDF maps that can have improved zoom capabilities. So you can zoom into a specific part of the building, floor, area, etc., and then have that printed within the PDF. It is also used to replace any static PNG files with sharp floor plans. It also can enable different layers. So for example, like I was saying, we can decide whether we want to show any labels, any colors, any neighborhood within the floor plan, and then generate a PDF out of this and print it. So this is particularly helpful for those who want to analyze or see what the floor plans look like without having to know how to navigate within indoor mapping or map studio. It is also a way to, share the floor plan with people that might need to look for something specific and they want to have it on the go in terms of a PDF. So in order to show you, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. One second. And I'm going to show you how that looks like on an instance. Okay. Let me know when you can see my Google Chrome. Hope that's visible now. But
Yeah, right now we're only looking at the URL. We can't see the full page.
oh, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so if you go into map printing, you should be able to see these options within the printing page. Once we selected, you will be able to select which building you want to start off. So let's say, let me just start over so that you can see how you would start to select. So basically, if you have multiple buildings, this is where you're gonna be able to select them. So let's say I want to see building A. It will start generating the PDF based on the floor plans that were updated and loaded into Map Studio. And here we can see all the floors are selected by default, but maybe, you're just interested in seeing what's there in floor number 1. So we can go ahead and unselect the other ones. Another thing that we can do is select which view we want to see. So for example, right now it's by default. We can also do it by kiosk and scenario planning. We can also add layers, like I was saying earlier. So if we want to display perhaps the neighborhoods, we can see there's this neighborhood over here. And if we zoom in, like I was saying, the capabilities have been improved in terms of the zooming. You can also enable the cost center, and you can see if you want to show the labels. Maybe you don't want to show any labels and no colors, just the legend. That is something that can be fully, configurable within this page. If you want to go ahead and also show the user assignments, the departments, etc., this is all entirely up to whoever needs to view the map. And then you can also select the layers as well. So you can say, maybe I want to hide the building layers, or maybe, I want to hide the furniture. So all of this is up to whoever is setting up how they want to print the map. Now, once it's ready, they can easily just click here and download, and they'll be able to see the PDF got generated. And now it's in a version that can be shared without anyone needing access to Map Studio or even knowing how to manage that part of the product. So we're very excited about this improvement in terms of map printing. We think it's going to be a very valuable add for all the facilities teams. And so we're hoping that you'll find it useful. We have it also more in detail in our blog. So I'm now going to go back and share my deck. Okay, I'll pass it to you, Elizabeth, for a case.
Perfect. Yeah. So as I was alluding to earlier, we do have an enhancement in terms of bringing more AI into WSD, and this is really aimed at the case manager or the agents that are actually working on the cases internally. So being able to summarize. So imagine a case where the employees requested something, or it's a maintenance case, any kind of workplace case, where there's a lot of action in terms of there's tasks that have been created, there's a lot of work notes, there's a lot of information that's compiled. Being able to summarize that to make sure that you're not missing any of the information and then can move on rapidly to make sure that you are taking the right decisions, you are working on it correctly, and do have the latest updates in terms of, let's say, your leadership wants an update, you're not going to read through the entire case. So, really providing that ability for that case manager to be able to summarize it, get the key information, and then be able to report on it. So that summary can then also be added as a work note. So let's say you've summarized it so far, it can then be added as a work note so everyone else can also read it. And then, of course, you can generate one later on down the line if more information comes. But the thing about this enhancement for the case summarization is also that this is configurable. So based on the setup of how you have the prompts defined and the field selection defined, let's say you only want to look at the work notes or you only want to look at specific fields in the case to be part of that summarization, you can really define that when you're setting up the skill as an admin in your instance. So really providing that flexibility to make sure it's really tailored to your needs when working in case management.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I will now move on to share our workplace collaboration agent. This is one of the agents that was released back in January, but still part of our Q1 release. And this agent basically works by analyzing the employees' collaboration data. So basically, who they set in as their collaborators. It also takes into account their workplace profile data, meaning it will take into account their location, and then it will also analyze any upcoming reservations to then be able to suggest employees when is the best day to be in the office. So this is a huge improvement and a great tool to allow employees and help them to plan better their in-office days and also make the most of their time in the office. Because with this agent, basically, they're able to just have a conversation and ask, what's the best day to be in the office? Or maybe who will be in the office tomorrow, instead of having to navigate through different calendars and making sure that, they can schedule a time to meet in a specific day. The agent does all of that for them. So it will be able to suggest the best days to be in office by seeing who all will be in office from their main collaborators. It will also be able to suggest them a space near these collaborators. So, say the employee says, what's the best day to be in office? And the agent says, it is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then the employee can say, can you book me a space on Tuesday? And the agent will do that and will find a space that is close to those collaborators. So, like I was saying, it really minimizes the effort of coordination. It really allows employees to focus on their main tasks instead of all this planning in order to meet their colleagues. And it really improves that in office time and the collaboration between teams. So, very exciting. We do have a full deep dive blog posted on community. Once I'm done presenting, I will link it in the chat. But over there, you can see all the different use cases that the agent covers for and its main features as well. Another big improvement that we have on the workplace experience side of the product is the invitees availability in reservations. This was something that was highly requested, and basically, it is the ability to allow employees to see which one of their colleagues are available at the time that they're trying to make a reservation. So the way that this would be previously handled is that they would make a reservation on WSD, but then they would have to go and check on a second calendar whether that colleague is available, or maybe, make the reservation and have a conversation with the colleague on the side Does this time work for you? Is this day in the office good for you, etc. So as of our March release, that is no longer the case. They can simply enable, the admins can simply enable the option to allow invitees into a reservation. And once that option is enabled, then the employees can just make a reservation as they usually would, and then add their colleagues that they want to invite into this reservation. So as we can see on the screen, but I will do a demo a little bit ahead during this webinar, the employee would just have to search for all those other colleagues that they want to add into the reservation. And then one really cool thing is that they will get suggestions as to when is the best time to meet. So they can, set what's their preferred time once they're looking for the reservation. But then maybe if that time does not work for the colleagues, then they will receive suggestions as to when is the best next available time for all of them to meet for that reservation. So again, making it really easy to collaborate, both, remotely and in person, by allowing to see which of the colleagues are available at what time, and just really streamlining that process instead of having to check in multiple places. So very exciting enhancement. The way that it's configured now is that the suggestions would be for up to the next 7 days. But this is something, like I said, that can be configured and it can be changed depending on the organization's needs. Now we will walk through some of the minor enhancements.
Yeah, and I can get started on that. So a lot of the users of WSD also utilize our HRSD suite of products, and as part of that, we do have the onboarding journey. So think of that of you've got new people that are going to be joining the team. They have to go through a certain amount of prerequisites to be able to make sure that they've done their background check. They've got all the relevant information, and then they go through the entire onboarding, and then they have their day one. But then on day one, they think, oh, yeah, but do I have a desk? What team am I part of? They don't have that immediate understanding. And then it's up to the space planner to have that information in some formal way via an Excel spreadsheet, via an email. How do they get that information? So what we've added here as part of that onboarding journey is making sure that one of the tasks as part of that is also to have a workplace location assignment. This could be either a space level, so saying the employee needs a specific desk or a specific private office, depending on the persona, or they just need to be assigned at a department at a neighborhood level. Then they, based on the criteria, they're going to be part of X cost center or Y department. That means they should be part of a specific neighborhood. So what we've added here is an extra piece to that puzzle in terms of that onboarding journey, making sure that when they get onboarded, they also go through that process of, okay, it checks all the information that's relevant to it. The HR agent then creates a case for the space planner that says this person needs to be assigned at this specific level. Is it a desk? Is it only a neighborhood? And that gets triggered on the WSD side to make sure that before that day one, before that employee starts, they have that information. They are being assigned to a specific location based on, is it a desk or is it a specific neighborhood, or it could be both. So really providing that kind of flow that makes it easy for that employee, that manager that will think, okay, my employee's coming day one. What am I going to do? Where's he going to sit? What's that location? Are they close to where the other teammates are? They will all get notified as soon as that person gets that seat or is assigned to that neighborhood. Everyone will be notified, and then no one will be in the doubt that day one. And the space planner would have done the information and won't be in a rush to say, okay, that employee is now being here for 3 months. If they still don't have a desk assigned or they're still not part of a neighborhood, here it's part of that initial flow. So making sure that it's done in a timely manner. And then another enhancement that we've done is in terms of that Workplace Central. So Workplace Central, you've probably heard us speak about it a lot, is that kind of home zone for the facility team. Whether it's tracking my leases, whether it's looking at my different maintenance schedules, whether it's optimizing my space, making sure I understand my portfolio. But understanding all of that, there's one crucial part that was missing, is understanding my facility assets. So customers that have WSD and what we'd call enterprise asset management already have a specific workspace. However, if we look at customers today that are only managing their specific locations and have facility assets, they have to go and dig deep to go and understand what assets do they have, what models do they have, how can they view those different assets, how can they add to them, edit the information, look at the basic information on those assets. So what we've done is pulled that information directly into Workplace Central. So in the list view, you'll be able to see all the different assets that I have, all my facility assets specifically related to my facility. Where are they located? The basic information tied to them, and then be able to filter, add new facility assets, but also be able to tie down to my different models. What types of models do I have? What information is relative to those? Because these assets are then used as part of the maintenance to make sure that I can create a maintenance plan against any of these. So this really allows that facility team to have a full overview of all that relative information. So what we've done is really pull that information into Workplace Central, and you'll see during future releases we will be doing small enhancements to here to really also not only look at my assets, but also in the later term be able to view the cases that are related to those assets. So being able to centralize that data. The safe harbor was mentioned at the start of the session. I'm not going to mention a specific time frame, but do know this is the first part of a smaller investment in terms of bringing that data into that centralized way.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I see there are some questions on the Q&A, so I'll let you go for that. I will now walk us through our personal authentication for Google. So this is something that we added in our Q1 release as well. So previously, the way that authentication for Google would happen is that all the reservations requests would go to a shared mailbox, and then or a shared admin that would have to then approve of those reservations. Now with this release, it was added to do the personal authentication. So basically, when an employee is creating a reservation from time to time, once their session has been expired, they will be asked to authenticate, their account or log in with their Google Calendar. Just like we're seeing on the screen, a message will pop up when they're creating the reservation that says, to create this reservation, you must log in with your Google Calendar credentials. If they click on continue, it will redirect them to the Google sign-in page. And then once they have, authenticated with their credentials, they will be able to continue with the reservation and complete it as well. So this is just a way to give employees a little bit more autonomy within their Google Calendar and their reservations. And it will synchronize all the reservations between WSD and Google Calendar to have that more of a seamless process. Now, as part of the reservations enhancements, we also have enhanced recurring patterns. So basically, I will go ahead and share a demo in a few minutes. But what this does is that recurring reservations was already enabled as of our past release, but in this one, we have increased or expanded those capabilities. So we now have a pop-up window that is called the custom recurrence. And within this window, you can set whether you want the recurrence to happen daily, weekly, and monthly. And within these options, a few other set of options will be displayed. This is really to support the employees, individual way of working. If they want to set up a meeting or a recurrence in a particular way, they can now do it with this custom mode. So it's a really good way to, be flexible and allow employees to make the reservations ahead of time and no need to keep on creating for the same type of, occurrence. So then now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you can see my employee center. 1 second. Okay, and now I'm going to log in as an employee to create the reservations. What I will be showing right now is going to be the way to create a reservation, add the attendees, check for the availability, and then also, look at the recurring patterns. So for this, I would just need to create a new reservation. And I saw, I believe, a question in the chat or Q&A about the new UI. So this is our new UI. I think it's really cool. I really like it. And so in here, if we go in and select what type of space do we want to reserve, let's say I'm interested in doing a meeting room. You can, again, have the same options as you would previously do, such as browse near person, area, neighborhood, etc. You can decide on the building and you can decide on the date. So for example, if I want a reservation today, you can just leave it like this. This is where the recurring part comes up. So we have these options as we used to do before. One thing that's really cool to call out is that, for example, today is a Tuesday, right? And so it will pick up the day of the week and it will suggest some recurrence options based on the day that we're starting the recurrence. So as we can see, it says you can do the recurrence weekly on a Tuesday, or monthly on fourth Tuesday of the month, or every weekday, Monday to Friday, etc. Now, the new option that was added was this custom field. So within the custom field, we can decide whether we want to do the recurrence daily, weekly, monthly, etc. And so basically within daily, we have these options. So maybe we want to repeat until this date. Now for weekly, we can just simply decide, okay, we want to do this reservation for Tuesdays and Thursdays every 2 weeks, and then decide when it will end. And then lastly, for monthly, we have other options as well, when to start it, the cadence of this recurrence. So maybe if we want to do every month, every 2 months, etc., on which day of the month, and then again, decide when do we want to end it. So I'm just gonna go ahead for this one. And then the last part was the one where we add the invitees. So, like I mentioned before, this is something that has to be enabled previously. But once it does, it will allow employees to add their invitees. So, here, for example, I want to invite Abel, and I also want Adela to be part of this reservation or this recurrence. So, it will start looking for suggestions and it will see that at the time that I initially had proposed, they're both available. So I can go with this option, but maybe, if something has come up or I see that there's a better time for me, then I can just, go ahead and select from these options. If you want more suggestions, it can also do that. But I'm just gonna go ahead and select this one. And based on that, we can just go ahead and then and select the room. Once we have added the room, we can continue with the reservation as we normally would. Now it's saying that I need to, log in with the Exchange credentials. This is part of the Google authentication. I'm going to skip that for now, but basically this is how it would look. Once the reservation details are filled out, the reservation can be submitted as it usually does, and that would be it. So I'm gonna go back into the screen and see if there are any questions, but like I said, very exciting enhancements for reservations. Um, and I think with this, I believe this is the end of our webinar. Let me go ahead and see if there are any open questions that I can answer live. I see some are for Workplace Central. Let me look at the chat. Yes, I can provide the link where you can find more information on the UI, of course. This is part of our December release, so it addresses it in there. And then just as an FYI, we're about to post a deep dive blog on the reservation enhancements. So you will be able to find that on community within the next few days. That one will address the two features that I just demoed right now. And it will also include, screenshots and details about the new UI with reservations. But like I said, that one will be coming in a few days. Okay, I see another question. Do sync the bookings with Outlook? Yes, this works with Outlook Exchange, and it is bidirectional. So if a user makes changes in the booking in Outlook, I believe that would be reflected, yes, on WSD. And then this is not something that is available right now to book through MS Teams or Zoom meetings. We're not supporting the online links just yet for this feature, or at least this enhancement.
The only one thing to call out is, as Paulina mentioned, if an employee makes the reservation in Outlook, they can edit it in Outlook, but they today cannot edit it in WSD,
Hmm.
just in case, because I know that's something that comes up quite often. So I just want to make
Yeah,
sure that uh, that is
it.
that is still on our roadmap, and that has a lot of implications in terms of connecting the Outlook. So,
Mhm.
and then there's a question for, is this desk reservations, Paulina?
It can be for anything that's enabled. So basically the modules can be configured to be available like this. So for example, if I set up the meeting rooms to allow the invitees, this will be applicable for that. But you can also do desks, you can also do, open spaces, whatever configurable module that you have available, you can enable the allow invitees option in there.
Think that brings us to an end. So yeah, there's one last question that came in. Do we have documentation on Google Calendar? Yes, we do, and we can we can make sure to share that with you after the webinar. So either if you could share your contact details, or
Mhm.
as Paulina mentioned at the start, you'll be prompted with a quick survey once the webinar ends.
Yeah.
Survey on understanding what you think about these sessions, how can we enhance, but also if you've got any questions that you'd like to direct to us, or we didn't get the chance to answer, feel free to put them in there and we'll make sure to get back to everyone. But please make sure you include an email address or any way we could reach out to you to make sure that we're reaching out to the right people.
Thank you. And I guess with that, we'll close down the webinar for today. Thank you all so much for joining and for your participation. I love all the questions that we received. And I think both Elizabeth and I have already put our emails on the chat. So if you have any other questions or need support with anything else, feel free to reach out to us. And we'll see you for the next webinar.